Os Segredos das Bruxas. Há no dicionário uma palavra tão controversa e evocativa que a sua simples menção traz à mente um mundo de imagens e emoções. Essa palavra é bruxaria.
Round about the cauldron go, in the poisoned entrails throw. Toad, that under cold stone days and nights has 31. Poison venom, sleeping god. Boil thou first in the charmed pot. Double, double, toil and trouble. Fire burn and cauldron bubble.
Em sua peça Macbeth, Shakespeare apresenta as bruxas preparando poções, predizendo o futuro, confessando a morte de um porco, o afundamento de barcos e o despertar de vendavais. Naquela época, todas essas eram razões suficientes para que as bruxas fossem perseguidas e queimadas na fogueira. Elas eram vistas como instrumento de caos e artifícios do mal. A única forma de libertar o mundo do mal era eliminá-las.
The witches of Macbeth are really something of a pastiche. They're stereotypes, if you like, exaggerated images. As to real witchcraft, well, again, we're dealing with an area which has got a lot of myths and a lot of exaggeration attached to it. We're used in the 20th century to the image of the old hag, which I guess is based somewhat on Shakespeare's view of witches, the evil old woman stirring up her brews in a pot and so on. But witches in the traditional sense were never really like that.
Paganism or Wicca or witchcraft or whatever you want to say, has been so misrepresented by the church and state for so long that people still don't really understand what we believe in, what we stand for. There are so many connotations and so many misconceptions.
Witchcraft is a very ancient set of beliefs, the beliefs that some people had powers by magic or some other supernatural means to control and influence things. That's different from paganism. Paganism is a belief in other gods, the non-Christian God. And although people often lump the two together, in fact they are completely separate.
A utilização das três bruxas na obra de Shakespeare faz referência ao folclore popular. Trata-se de um número místico, o princípio, o meio e o fim. As fases da lua, o nascimento, a vida e a morte, a mãe, o pai e o filho. Até as três bruxas têm a sua lei tripla. Crê-se que todo ato mágico perpetrado por uma feiticeira voltará para ela com o triplo da força. Por exemplo, um ato de boa vontade retornará como bem triplicado. Consequentemente, se a magia for usada com más intenções, será também retribuída, mas com um resultado muito grave. Normalmente, quando pensamos em bruxas, pensamos sempre que estão agindo contra o bem comum. Lembramos-nos das histórias de perseguição, tortura e morte. Muitos instrumentos de tortura foram criados especificamente para arrancar confissões de uma bruxa calada ou relutante em falar. Criou-se uma série de testes e processos para identificar as bruxas. Henrique VIII da Inglaterra publicou um primeiro decreto contra a bruxaria em 1542. A segunda lei contra a bruxaria, aprovada em 1563, durante o reinado de Isabel I, decretou a condenação à morte de todos os condenados por assassinato mediante atos de bruxaria. A terceira lei foi de Jaime I, que tinha pavor de bruxas. Acreditava que as bruxas de Berwick tinham criado uma tempestade para afundar o seu barco, quando ele e a mulher, a rainha Ana, estavam a bordo. Durante seu reinado, autorizou a publicação das primeiras cópias da Bíblia em inglês. A princípio, esta trazia em suas páginas: "Não permitirás que viva um envenenador". No entanto, a frase foi alterada para "não permitirás que viva uma bruxa", tal como rezava o decreto real. Escreveu também o seu próprio livro sobre o tema intitulado Demonologia, para reforçar a sua perspectiva em relação à bruxaria.
The Christian faith is often seen as promoting a series of do's and don'ts for the way people live their lives, whereas Wicca seems to suggest that if it harms no one, then do as you please. But that begs the question, how do you assess whether what they're doing harms no one or not? Is it simply that it harms none of the people involved in that particular activity? But even then, how do you assess that without having objective rules to refer to?
Na Europa, o medo da bruxaria tornou-se uma epidemia. A Europa Ocidental atingiu o ponto mais alto de processos contra a bruxaria e práticas de tortura. Os acusadores e os acusados iam desde o senhor ao camponês. O inquisidor, geralmente nomeado pelas autoridades da cidade ou da igreja local, torturava o acusado, usando a força física para lhe arrancar confissões. Centenas de acusados arderam na fogueira. Em vilas e aldeias, as disputas entre vizinhos eram perigosas. A possibilidade de ser acusado de bruxaria era aterradora. A paranoia atingiu enormes proporções. A maior parte dos acusados eram mulheres. Em algumas cidades da Alemanha, a população feminina foi quase dizimada. Uma das torturas típicas era a cadeira das bruxas de Bamberg. Era feita de ferro e tinha um assento coberto de cravos. O acusado era obrigado a sentar-se na cadeira enquanto esta era aquecida pelo fogo. Após a confissão, costumava seguir-se a execução na fogueira.
In England, witches were hanged, not burned. Burning was seen as the punishment for heretics, and this is not what witches were accused of being. They were charged with killing or maiming people, animals or people, by witchcraft, and they were therefore prosecuted and punished for that criminal offence, for the injury they had caused. In the continent, by contrast, witches generally were burned, and that's probably where the misconception has arisen about the fate of English witches.
Tal como em muitos outros casos da história, o tempo distorce e cria outros conceitos populares errôneos, como a da cadeira de água.
Witches were not, in fact, ducked, as the popular misconception goes. Ducking, tying somebody to the end of a seesaw apparatus and ducking them in the village pond, was a punishment for so-called scolds. A scold being a bad-tempered, quarrelsome, irritating woman, abusive woman, and the punishment was seen as a way of cooling her temper, and in practice, of course, it's a form of public humiliation, very effective as such. The nearest equivalent in the case of witchcraft is what was called swimming a witch, in which a group of villagers would tie the suspect with ropes and tie her to a rope and then drop her into a pond or a river to see whether she floated or sank. If she floated, this was seen as a token that she was being rejected by the element of water, the element of baptism, and that was seen as a token of probable guilt. If she sank, that meant she was probably innocent, though of course she then had to be pulled out and rescued pretty quickly in case she drowned. But in either case, that would not be the basis for a formal punishment. The villagers would then have to report her alleged offence to a magistrate, and it would then proceed to trial before a judge and a jury in a proper court of law.
O mais notável caçador de bruxas foi Matthew Hopkins, que no tempo da Guerra Civil Inglesa atingiu o posto de general caçador de bruxas.
Matthew Hopkins is fairly obscure by origin. He's probably the son of a Suffolk clergyman, but he comes into prominence in 1645 when he discovers a mission, as he sees it, to root out and destroy witches in East Anglia. And this is the launch of a crusade over the next 2 years, in which he has over 100 people executed in Suffolk, Essex, and the eastern counties of England.
Now, the interesting thing about Matthew Hopkins is that although people imagine he ranged widely up and down the country, burning witches wherever he went, in fact, that's not true. His area of operations was very small and it was restricted to East Anglia. He had a great deal of trouble finding witches wherever he went and resorted to all sorts of intimidatory tactics in order to get people to confess or to report on their neighbours.
He's seen today, I think, as a tragic figure in some ways, as well as a disaster in terms of the consequences of what he did. He seems to be genuinely motivated by a sense of mission, of crusade. He thought he was one of the good guys doing God's work to root out these monsters. That's not, of course, how he's seen today.
Antes de a bruxa ir a tribunal, era preciso extrair-lhe uma confissão como prova conclusiva. Hopkins era apologista da privação de sono. Mantinha suspeita de bruxaria em isolamento e mais tarde os seus ajudantes despiam-na e a impediam-na de dormir, fazendo-a caminhar dia e noite. Ao fim de alguns dias desse suplício, a confissão geralmente era fácil, bem como a dos nomes de seus cúmplices. Depois, seguia-se o julgamento.
Yes, the trials were in fact remarkably fair by the conventions and standards of the 16th and 17th century. By which I mean that they were held before a judge on a circuit, an assize court judge, and a jury, and the evidence was weighed up and sifted very carefully. The witnesses were brought forward, they were questioned and examined, and it was by no means a case of automatic conviction in the sense of a panic producing an automatic conviction. The majority of suspect witches were in fact acquitted, and only about 1 in 5 of those accused was eventually hanged. So the courts did try to sift between what they thought as well-documented cases and what they thought of as perhaps just the result of rumour or prejudice or malice by neighbours, even though the evidence, of course, is very circumstantial in all cases.
Hopkins, tal como as práticas de perseguição, foi também alvo de controvérsia histórica ou de mal-entendidos.
Nobody knows for sure what was driving Matthew Hopkins. It used to be thought that he was driven by greed. I think that's unlikely. He did get paid fees and a certain amount of expenses, but they were not large sums, and at the outset he had no way of knowing that he was going to be paid at all. It may be that he came to like the notoriety that he achieved, but the evidence suggests that he was genuinely a man with a mission, a misguided mission, and he thought of himself as on a crusade, doing something that was essential to rid the world from what he saw as this sinister evil in the midst. And that the period is a significant one. It comes at the end of the Civil War, when structures had broken down to some extent, and that gave him the opportunity to do far more damage than he would have been able to do in normal times, in peacetime.
There is actually a genuine mystery surrounding Matthew Hopkins. When people finally had enough and chased him out, he disappeared and nobody knows where he went. It has been suggested that he went over to America, and it has been suggested that he's resumed his activities there, although there are alternative suggestions that he went to ground and enjoyed his wealth which he accrued through his witch-finding activities. However, at least one author I know has pointed to the fact that the Salem witch trials, although some 50 years following the witch craze in East Anglia due to Matthew Hopkins, could just possibly have fallen within Matthew Hopkins' lifetime. I leave it at that. I have no view on whether that's true or not, but an interesting little mystery.
Em 1662, em Salem, Massachusetts, 3 crianças da aldeia tinham sido, segundo alguns relatos, iniciadas na magia e nas ciências ocultas por uma criada, Tituba. Começaram a sofrer ataques e crises de histeria inexplicáveis. Samuel Parris, o sacerdote local, considerou que este comportamento se devia à possessão diabólica. Primeiro, as meninas acusaram Tituba, a criada, que chegou a confessar voluntariamente que enfeitiçara as garotas. Pouco se sabe das práticas de magia que Tituba praticou, mas crê-se que as iniciou na arte do voodoo. No entanto, as 3 meninas continuaram a acusar outras pessoas que não sabiam por que tinham sido implicadas. Entre 10 de junho e 22 de setembro, 19 pessoas residentes em Salem tinham sido enforcadas.
In the case of Salem and the American case, the episode begins with some quite young girls, adolescent or pre-adolescent girls, claiming to have been possessed. Now, what a psychiatrist or a psychologist would make of that, we can only speculate. They quickly discovered that this gave them an amazing and novel degree of power within their own family and, of course, within the local community. Normally, a teenage girl's opinions count for less than nothing in that context. All of a sudden, they are now the centre of attention in the whole community, and they quickly discover they have the power, in effect, of life and death over their elders by making claims. She possessed me, she is a witch. And I think there's little doubt in that case, and in many cases in France, that you get a sort of snowball effect that takes place as they grow to understand and then to relish their power. And there are some examples of that in England itself, of children or adolescents claiming possession and then being corrupted, if you like, by the power they realize they have now possessed.
Por fim, levantou-se uma onda de revolta contra os julgamentos. Baseados em provas fracas obtidas sob intimidação e extrema pressão, os julgamentos de Salem não passaram das acusações iniciais. Uma análise diferente dos acontecimentos apresenta também uma explicação plausível para os julgamentos. Paris recebeu grande apoio por parte dos agricultores mais pobres de Salem. Para eles, Paris e a igreja da aldeia representavam a estabilidade e os valores tradicionais. Viam no poder que os comerciantes estavam conquistando em Salem uma ameaça para o seu modo de vida. Muitos dos que foram vítimas da caça às bruxas, encabeçada por Paris e seus apoiadores, estavam ligados a esta nova classe social de Salem. A história de Salem foi imortalizada na peça As Bruxas de Salem, de Arthur Miller. Nela se refletem os julgamentos de McCarthy, que aconteciam na América naquela época. Era evidente o paralelismo das acusações, que se tornaram frenéticas no ambiente onde ninguém podia sentir-se seguro. Porém, no espírito de muita gente, a distinção entre literatura e fatos históricos é confusa.
I think in England and in America, witchcraft does not really come from people with power. So I don't think that would be the right way of seeing it. Essentially in England, and indeed in America, it begins at a grassroots level with friction and rivalries and clashes of personality within a small local community. Very often the witch is somebody on the margins, often elderly, unpopular, at loggerheads with her neighbours.
Talvez o melhor exemplo de perseguição a uma bruxa por razões políticas se encontre na história de Joana d'Arc. Era vista como uma ameaça para a igreja e para o Estado, e os boatos de feitiçaria e das vozes que ela confessou que ouvia dentro de sua cabeça foram usados como razão legítima para executá-la. Joana d'Arc morreu na fogueira, condenada pela igreja por heresia em 1431. Há poucas dúvidas de que essa condenação ocorreu apenas por razões políticas, porque 500 anos mais tarde, Joana foi canonizada pela mesma igreja que a condenou à morte.
There is a theory, not given very much credibility by historians, but nevertheless current, that Joan was a witch. And this is a persistent legend. It recurs in several different forms. The most straightforward one is that she was an adherent of the old religion, strict witchcraft, and that she was fulfilling certain kinds of duties in relation to that old religion. I mean, one needs to remember here that Domremy, where she was born, had a reputation for witchcraft. It was known, for instance, to have a fairy tree and a fairy well, and it's under the fairy tree that Joan first heard her voices. So there is a strong suggestion that even if she wasn't a witch, she was certainly influenced by the old religion. But personally, I incline to the view, which is slightly more prosaic, that Charles VII was actually a rather weak, self-seeking, vain man who was rather glad to be rid of her. I mean, let's not forget, Joan had this reputation for being very argumentative, very willful. And she, when she was captured by the Burgundians, she was captured on an action that she herself had initiated against the express wishes of Charles VII. So in a sense, getting rid of her was quite a relief for a man who, after all, did not want to engage in warfare.
Outras perseguições tiveram lugar por razões puramente materiais.